Hi, and welcome to Chapter 5. Lots of commas in real estate. As you guessed it, this is all about commas. Here we go. So, for you look at sentence structure first, compound sentences. A compound sentence has two or more independent clauses. As we saw last chapter, independent clauses really is a sentence that are connected by a coordinating conjunction, which is and, or, but, or, nor. So here we go. Rule 5.1. Use a comma before a conjunction that joins two independent clauses. So when you see two independent clauses and they're joined by a conjunction like and, or, but, or, nor, needs a comma before the conjunction. Example. There has been a decrease in the prices of new homes, comma, but the demand remains weak. The comma is not after the conjunction, the comma is before. Another example, the bank approved the mortgage application, comma, and the buyer will proceed with the deal. So very simple. When you see two sentences or two independent clauses joined by a conjunction, you have to have a comma. Rule 5.2. When a subject does not follow the conjunction, no comma is needed. All right, so the application must be completed by the borrower and returned within 10 days. Returned within 10 days is not an independent clause. It does not have a subject, so there is no comma, right? So here's another example. The new homes are in a beautiful suburban area and convenient to a shopping mall. If you just say convenient to a shopping mall, this is not an independent clause. This is a phrase. And certainly here, you will not put a comma before the conjunction. That's Rule 5.2. Rule 5.3, when the conjunction and is followed by the word that, do not place a comma before the conjunction unless the word that is the subject of the clause. This is a tough one, no doubt about it. Right? So here it goes again. When the conjunction and is followed by the word that, right away, and that, do not place a comma before the conjunction unless the word that is the subject of the clause. That could be a subject of the clause. So here we go. The mortgage was approved by the bank and that expedited the sale. That is a pronoun and that expedited the sale. That is the subject of, and then you need certainly to put a comma because this is two independent clauses. Now here we go again. The buyer and the seller disagreed on the terms of the contract and that sale was canceled. That now turns into be a adjective and sale is the subject. Sale was canceled, so there is no comma there. No comma. Okay? Whoops. No comma here. So here we go. Here are 5 examples. Please pause the screen. Yes, the answers are at the bottom. Please don't cheat. Just to practice a little bit, take a look at 5 and fill in where you think you need to set. You look at, refer to the rules, I should say, and put the commas if it's needed. All right, let's get into adjectives. Now, adjectives modify or describe nouns or pronouns. Adjectives are also used to compare items. So in the rule 5.4, excuse me, when comparing two items, add ER to the adjective. When comparing 3 or more items, add EST to the adjective. So here are examples. When comparing adjectives of 3 or more syllables or ending in able or able, you can say able, but able, it's there, or able, use more, most, less, or least. So here we go, comparative, most competent, superlative, most competent. Comparative when it's 2, superlative when it's more than 2. Less effective, least effective. More desirable, most desirable. And less accessible, least accessible. Adjectives comparative and superlative. That's 5.4. 5.5, adjectives a or a, and, or the are also referred to as articles. So use a or a when the word that follows begins with a consonant or the sound of a long U. U, like you see there, university. So use an when the word that follows begins with a vowel or a silent H. So here we go. A skyscraper, that's a consonant. A university, long U. You don't put an there. Even if it's a vowel, it's a university. A university. It's not an university. And also, if you're never sure, if you're not sure, always say it out loud. And you'll be surprised that when you do say it out loud, that you'll get the sound. An university, right? Doesn't make sense. A university does. An attorney and an hour. Silent H, right? It's the O here. That is the vowel. So an hour. Okay? It's silent. Fantastic. These are not really that difficult. You do need to practice, like I said, and as much as possible to practice all the examples or all the exercises I give you to get good at it. Rule 5.6. When regular form verbs are used as adjectives, add D or ED. So verb, form, adjective. Approve, approved design. Reduce, reduced rate. I apologize if it's not in order. And revise, revised draft. Again, when regular form verbs are used as adjectives, right, add D or ED. So these are verbs, right? Approve. And when you have to have a regular form as adjectives, you can't say approve design, it's approved design. Same thing with reduce. You can't say reduce rate, reduced rate. Revise doesn't stand alone. Revised draft, it's revised draft. Here are some examples. Please pause the screen, and of course you have the key at the bottom. Now when you look at adverbs, 5.7, adverbs really are the ones that stand out the most or has different rules and regulations, rules I should say, when it comes to the English language, and they really modify adjectives, they modify verbs, and they certainly modify other adverbs too, right? That's what they do. So adverbs really are the ones that play around a lot, and in the English language we try to use less and less of them, but a lot of people use them because it is colorful and it adds words to a sentence. So adverbs modify verbs, adjectives, or other adverbs. They tell when, where, how, and how much. So they clarify the action or they give you more information about the action of the verb. So here's a sentence, that's an example. The engineer clearly outlined the building plan. We can easily take off the adverb and you got the engineer outlined the building plan, which is pretty clear as it is, right? But if you, and it is because usually engineers are meticulous and are very clear with what they do. So here, you don't really need the use of the word, of the adverb clearly, but if you really want to make a statement, certainly you can. But in many cases, the message is very clear. The engineer outlined the building plan. The engineer usually is clear on what they do. But here, the engineer clearly outlined the building plan. Okay. Another one, the beautifully decorated house was featured in a magazine, right? Again, you can take out beautifully, and the decorated house was featured in a magazine. Now, this is the good thing about, or the great thing, let me just finish this one and I'll tell you in a minute. The team worked really hard to meet the deadline, right? So really modifies the adverb hard, right? In this case, really modifies the adverb hard, right? So now, this is a great thing about when you're talking about adverbs or adverbial phrases. We're not doing adverbial phrases here, but basically an adverbial phrase is a phrase that begins with an adverb. So here you've got the three examples. Let's look at this one, what you can do with adverbs and how it is incredible how you could move this around. And you know this is an adverb when you can move it around. Watch this. Clearly, the engineer outlined the building plan. Does it make sense? Yes. So that is a complete sentence. Again, same as you got there. The engineer clearly outlined the building plan. The engineer outlined clearly the building plan. Still makes sense. Or here's another one. The engineer outlined the building plan clearly. So there you go. Sometimes you have to be very careful with the adverb, and the only way you know it's an adverb is if it moves around. In this case, I can put it in 4 spots, and it still sounds okay, and it still makes sense. It's a complete sentence. Let's try this one. The beautifully decorated house was featured in the magazine. Let's try beautifully. The decorated house was featured in the magazine. It sounds a bit weird, but it's still okay. Let's try it again. The decorated house was beautifully featured in the magazine. Still makes sense. And again, another one. The decorated house was featured in the magazine beautifully. Okay, it doesn't sound really well, but it's still okay in the English language. Let's try the last one. The team worked really hard to meet the deadline. Okay, the team worked to meet the deadline really hard, right? So it still makes sense. It does not go at the beginning, but you still could say really hard, the team worked to meet the deadline. In this case, you can't say it. So sometimes there is exceptions, but here you can move really hard to the end of the sentence, and you'll know that that really is an adverb and an adverb, right? So you have to be very careful with adverbs. They're all over the place, and you have to ask yourself a question. If you could move it around, you know that it's an adverb. Rule 5.8, there are some adjectives and adverbs that can be troublesome. In other words, this is an exception to the rules. Right? So good is an adjective. She received good grades in the college. Right? You know that it's an adjective because you can put the word very. You can do the very test. This is called the very test. So she received very good grades in the college. You know that that's an adverb. An adjective, I should say, because you can put the word very in front of good and it still makes sense. That is called the very test. So let's try the other one. Well is usually an adverb. It may be used as an adjective when referring to one's health. Right? So here we go. She completed the job well. So this is also can be considered to be an adjective. She completed the job well, or she completed the job very well. You can still put it there, right? So here it's very troubling because you have exceptions to the rule about very, because even the next sentence you can. Michael was not feeling very well yesterday, right? So it's kind of confusing that here that the verb is not an adjective, not an adverb, but an adjective, I should say, but it still refers to as an adverb, okay? So you have to be careful with that. Here, bad is an adjective. The team received the bad news that they would not be in the tournament, right? And you can also say the team received the very bad news that they would not be in the tournament. You can still say very bad. Use the adjective bad after the verbs feel or look. I feel very bad, or I feel bad about the damages to your house. Now you know this one's an adverb and not an adjective, the next one. The child was hurt badly in the accident. The child was hurt very badly in the accident. You can't say that. It doesn't sound correct, so it's wrong, right? You know that badly is not an adjective. It is an adverb, okay? So there's a little test that you could do. It's called the very test. Okay, so here's another little, again, you have the key at the bottom, and you could take a look at that and refer to it. And you can pause the screen right here, and you can further on look at do the actual little exercises here. But more importantly, please do the exercises that I allowed it. The activities are really important because as you can see, when you have an exam, certainly it comes into play. And if you know all your rules inside and out, they're not that many per chapter, you will do always well in the exam. Short and sweet, and this is all about commas, referring to adverbs and also adjectives. Thank you.